Good evening. This is a meeting of the Athens Board of Zoning Appeals. The time is 7 p.m. and the date is November 14, 2012. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. The board consists of 5 members and 2 alternates, the alternates taking full part in the discussions and coming voting members in the absence of a member or when a member abstains for conflict of interest. Present tonight are Greg Lavelle, Kate Housley, Thomas Raby, I am Betty Hollow, acting chair, and we're expecting, I hope, Ms. Gronowski. Also present is Zoning Administrator John Paskey and Secretary Paul Eschenbacher. The board operates under the following procedure. The chair will name and describe the case. The zoning administrator will state the basis of the objection and any applicable facts or conditions pertaining to the case. The appellant or their representative will give reason why the appeal should be viewed favorably. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in general comment will be heard, and anyone wishing to speak in opposition will be heard. If necessary, the appellant or representative will offer concluding summary or rebuttal remarks. Testimony from the floor will be closed, and the board will deliberate and render a decision. According to Athens City Code section of the code, provided the variance will not be contrary to the public interest, the spirit of the code is observed, public safety and welfare are secured, and substantial justice is done. According to Athens City Code 230910C, variances from the code shall not be granted unless the board finds, based on direct, specific findings of fact, that each of the following conditions has been supported. The first one is practical difficulty and undue hardship. Because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property, a literal enforcement of the regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes. Number 2, exceptional circumstances. There are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zone. 3, preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of these regulations would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone or the same vicinity, while a granting of the requested variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that's denied to other properties in the same zone and the same vicinity. Minimum variance. The variance granted is the minimum variance to make possible the reasonable use of the property. Absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of such a substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest. Not of a general nature. The condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use of said property for which the variance is sought, one or the other or in combination, is not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make reasonably practicable the formulation of a general regulation for such a condition or situation. I think I don't need to read that tonight. Any person, resident, or officer, department, or appointed body of the City of Athens aggrieved by decision of the board may petition the Athens County Court of Common Pleas concerning the illegality of the decision. Such petition must be filed within 30 days after the mailing of decision of the board to the applicant. There are 4 cases tonight. Case 1212V is at 38 East Park Drive, Zone M. The City of Athens is the appellant. Case 1213V at 115 Central Avenue. Nathan Carey is the appellant. This is in an R zone. Case 1214V at 55 First Street, Zone R1. Michael A. Lockman is the appellant. And the last case is 1215V. It's in a B3 zone at 924 East State Street. Jack Bortle is the appellant. The next thing we need to do is to swear in anyone who wishes to speak tonight. So if you think you're going to give any testimony at all, would you please rise and raise your hand? And do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth no matter what? Okay, thank you. As I said, the first court case is at 38 East Park Drive. The appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 250411D, flood damage prevention, compensatory storage, to allow construction of new tanks for the wastewater treatment plant with more than 1 cubic foot of fill per square foot, where less than 1 cubic foot of fill per square foot of property may be imported without compensation. So we will ask Mr. Eschenbacher to speak about that.
It'll be mostly Mr. Loeb doing the explanation. Okay. I just wanted to say, as far as the procedure for this case, I think it's the same. You have him talk, anybody for, anybody against. The only difference are the findings at the end, which is 250506, which is what I gave.
Okay, and that's what you gave us. Okay, thank you. Mr. Loeb.
Good evening. Paul Loeb, City Planner and City Floodplain Administrator. I am here tonight to talk about a few flood issues that we've come across with respect to the Public Works Department's goal of making some updates and improvements to our wastewater treatment plant. They've been working on this project for about a year, and I've been working with them relating to flood issues for about 9 months. As you're probably well aware, based on that location, it is clearly in our floodplain. As you can probably understand, when you're dealing with wastewater treatment plants anywhere, almost by design, they are expected to be near a body of water. That's just the process, unless there's no body of water nearby. There are situations in desert areas and mountain areas where there's alternatives to that, where it's essentially just a very large septic type system. But in the Midwest and on the coast and in the South, where there's bodies of water, wastewater treatment plants are located near bodies of water. What that means, of course, is that when you're dealing with a wastewater treatment plant in a floodplain, you have to deal with FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, which is the local or the state authority that handles floodplain administration. You have to deal with the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency with respect to what you're putting into the water after it's treated or through the treatment process. And you also have to deal with the City of Athens. Unlike our zoning ordinances, which specifically state that local government agencies are exempt from zoning, provided that they can demonstrate that they cannot, for whatever reason, meet our zoning code. Flood ordinances are different. All organizations are expected to comply with floodplain, whether that be the city, the county, Ohio University, etc. And everybody's making great efforts to do that. The project at hand is consistent and is approved and meets all of FEMA's and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources floodplain standards. What we've done in the city, and which other communities do as well, at times cities will adopt higher standards. The standard that we're looking at, this 250411D, which is compensatory storage, that is a city standard. It is higher than what Federal Emergency Management requires for floodplain administration. It was our decision to put that into our city code in order to address significant fill issues that we were having within our 20-year frequently flood areas. About 4 years ago, we adopted this code. We put some higher standards in there, and we hired an engineer to do all this mapping. For the most part, it's worked really well. We've had several permits come in for developments for off-campus student housing rental units in our 20-year floodplain, and the goal is to find alternatives to bringing more fill in. The problem with fill when you're dealing with a frequently flooding area is if I fill up, which is permitted by FEMA, in essence, when we get one of those more frequent floods like we had in 2006, When that flood hits in those areas, my property might be protected, but what I'm actually doing is pushing water out onto other properties. So while I'm minimizing my risk, I could actually be increasing risk on my neighbors. FEMA doesn't establish that as necessarily being a problem. That's part of the FEMA's code, and to FEMA, ideally, they want everybody to be filling. They want everything elevated, HALOD standards. With this 20-year situation, you are allowed to import fill to a limit. You're also allowed to import above that limit, provided that you do what's called compensatory storage. And what that means, based on the city's compensatory storage ordinance, is that for every cubic foot that you import, you have to basically you have to subtract a cubic foot of dirt from somewhere else on your site. And that cubic foot should be used for that's where the water would sit when you have a flood event, if that makes any sense. That way you're not pushing water out,
right.
Okay? So what you have to look at with this situation is that because we have a wastewater treatment plant, the complexity of that type of a facility, you can't bring in a lot of fill. We're trying to minimize that, and I kept working with our Engineering and Public Works Department to try to minimize the fill. When I first started talking with them about this in late spring, they anticipated that they would be importing about 10,000 cubic yards of fill. It's a lot of dirt, and I was concerned about that. I started saying, what can we do to try to minimize this down? Since that point, the most recent, the finished plans here, they were able to reduce that from 10,000 down to about 6,700 cubic yards. So we're talking, they were able to find ways to reduce it by about 33 or 35%. From that point, they said, to get this project built, we can't go any lower. So then we started saying, well, does it make sense to be excavating large ponds that are rarely going to be used, maybe once every 20 years or every 17 years, already on our floodplain, in lands that can't be developed? Because again, we're talking about the whole reason for that portion of the code was to protect other property. If you look at where our wastewater treatment plant is located, to the immediate west of it, there is the highway. So there's already an embankment built there so that the water can't backfill. Across the river is green space. And then upriver from it, or downriver, excuse me, you have green space which the city owns. You have our community center to the north on the bike path, but then you also have the bike path where the old railroad was, which also serves as an embankment. So if there's any displacement of water, the water would not be displaced in any situations where structures could be damaged. So when I was talking about that with Public Works, I said, I think we've come to a point where I could reasonably try to present a request for a variance to our Board of Zoning Appeals so that we don't have to try to be making these large ponds, which in many cases would be unattractive to a stretch of our bike path, which is very attractive and is very heavily traveled. And then we could try to preserve the green space as it is. So I guess that's why I'm here this evening, is to try to discuss that with the Board of Zoning Appeals and to request a variance from that compensatory storage requirement. And I'll be happy to open it up for any questions you might have.
So just a couple of quick questions. So if one of the displacement areas, due to the amount of fill that's put in there, is the rec center, I'm assuming the rec center is at a level that would be...
the rec center is not in that 20-year floodplain. All of the areas that are within that 20-year floodplain are green space that, because of flood issues and because of demand and because of the way we've developed, they're just parklands, and they're natural floodplains on the opposite side or on the south side of the bike path.
And the second question is, if we did these fill basins, and if we would have a flood during the summertime or during mosquito weather, I would assume that maybe they would be stagnant and cause
Yeah,
place for mosquitoes to...
that could be a problem, that's correct, right.
Thank you.
The two properties, or maybe it's one owned property that's on the side of the bike path that the water treatment plant's on, that,
Yes.
would those be affected? I mean, those are the only properties on the other side of the bike path other than the sewage treatment plant.
The two properties to the north, you mean? Where
Yeah,
where the dog park is?
The dog park.
It used to be between the hotel and the wastewater treatment plant.
No, the other way.
To the
It used to be
east.
a retail store and an archery store at one time. and-
Right. Those are actually non-conforming structures that are in our floodway, and our long-term goal with those, they are completely non-compliant with FEMA's regulations. They shouldn't be there at all. So the long-term goal with structures like that would be to actually get them entirely out of that area. That's our floodway, which...
I mean, that would be the ideal, but I mean,
Right.
that's going to be up to the owners of that piece of property.
At this point, yeah, no, they can't do any improvements to them or additions or anything
Right.
like that.
But they'd be pretty affected if,
They could in theory. I mean, if you're thinking about it, we're talking about a 20-year flood. If you look at the pictures from the 2006 flooding that we had in January, I don't believe the water got there. But if you're thinking about how you displace water, if you've got a flat plain, the increase on any other part, it might be from, if the flood's right here, now it might be up there. Because you're displacing all this water over a flat plain so it'll displace everywhere. So it might actually be a very small increase. But yes, yeah.
Can you explain the statement that the clarifiers and equalization basin can perform as storage for the flood water?
Yes, I can. Is that what that says? They can serve as storage for the flood waters?
Well, that's how I interpreted it. Storage for the 14,202 cubic yards of flow during wet weather events, effectively storing flood water.
Right.
Yes, I believe, well, there's two things. One of which is that in a flood event, the wastewater treatment plant would not be adding water back into it. It would not be putting effluent in. And so the storage tanks would be holding that effluent back from the treated water into the river.
Oh,
And that's
it
one of
wouldn't
the
be
things those storage
containing
tanks would do.
Contaminated flood water.
Correct, right,
Okay.
right. And the tops of the storage tanks, those are engineered and designed and will be constructed so that even during a 100-year flood event, the flood waters would not be dumping in, nor would effluent be dumping back out.
And that would be because of their height or because...
Because of their
covers?
height and because of FEMA's requirements, right. Because they're meeting all of those other standards. They're meeting FEMA's and ODNR's and Ohio EPA's standards for development in a floodplain. What they're not meeting is the city's requirement, if that makes any sense. So if the city didn't, we had the option to put this compensatory storage in there. FEMA didn't mandate that. We have almost everything else in our flood code is mandated as a minimum that a community that has subsidized flood insurance rates, which we do. If you're going to be a member of the flood insurance risk program, you have to have minimums, and we've adopted minimums, and then we actually decided let's go a little bit above those minimums to try to protect our community a little bit more.
will this increase the insurance on that property once they're built?
It will not, no.
And that would be because it meets FEMA and...
That's
Ohio
correct,
EPA.
right. And I've got the documents here, the flood-proofing certificate, and all of the information from our professional engineers. That's FEMA's requirement that the documents be stamped by a professional engineer, the designer for the project to confirm that it meets their flood-proofing standards.
So, do you see any downside to this proposal?
I don't, no. As a floodplain administrator, I do not actually. I think some of these types of issues, I look at all the other, and even as a planner, I have to look at, there's a lot of issues involved here. I know we're not allowed to look at cost, but we're tethered to this location for our wastewater treatment plant. It was built back in 1952. It was built when we still had an airport there, before those subdivisions were built. There's no alternative to relocate that wastewater treatment plant. We also have requirements from the Ohio EPA with which to make improvements to that plant. So we have to do that. We also have expectations with trying to keep our costs to our taxpayers as low as possible, and to our wastewater treatment sewage users, which is all of us in here, to try to keep our bills as low as possible on a monthly basis. So there's all those little issues that are coming in here. What I did see was, working through the process with our Public Works Department and with the engineers here, is that they were making every effort possible to minimize the amount of dirt and fill that they had to bring in. And when they, like I said, when we first started talking about this, they were looking at significantly more, and I started pushing them a little bit and saying, what can we do to try to make it an easier case, and so that we are minimizing that risk, because the flood events are something that anybody in the floodplain is going to be exposed to, so including that actual building right there.
Other questions? No more questions? Okay. Is there, maybe is this when we make a motion?
Yes.
I think maybe it is. Let's see if we can get somebody to make a motion about this variance.
I move that the board consider granting a variance in case 1212B, Zone M, 38 East Park Drive, City of Athens appellant, from ACC 250411D, flood damage prevention and compensatory storage, to allow construction of new tanks for the wastewater treatment plant with more than 1 cubic foot of fill per square foot, where less than 1 cubic foot of fill per square foot of property may be imported without compensation.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this variance? Anyone who wishes to speak in general comment? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Maybe this isn't what you came to talk about. Okay. Other comments from you all before we go through some of these things that we're supposed to look at? No? Okay. So, Mr. Aschenbacher, these are the things that we're supposed to consider
I think
rather than the regular findings.
I think if you just go through them, and if anybody has, specific objections, I would say.
Okay.
I would think each of the letters, you would assume that it's been met, but if the board members individually have any...
Okay. All right. In passing upon such appeals as the one we're talking about, the appeals board shall consider the following, and again, these are not our usual findings that I read to you at the beginning. A says, all technical evaluations, all relevant factors and standards specified in other sections of this title. I think Mr. Logue is addressing those. B, the danger that materials may be swept onto other lands to the injury of others. The danger of life and property due to flooding or erosion damage. Speak up if you have objections. The susceptibility of the proposed facility and its contents to flood damage and the effect of such damage on the individual owner. There are not actually too many owners in this direct vicinity, are there? The importance of the services provided by the proposed facility to the community, which are certainly essential. The availability of alternative locations for the proposed use, which are not subject to flooding or erosion, and Mr. Logue tells us there are no such places. the necessity to the facility of a waterfront location where applicable, and in this case it certainly is applicable, the compatibility of the proposed use with existing and anticipated development. Okay. The relationship of the proposed use to the comprehensive plan and floodplain management program for that area. And I think certainly you all have considered that pretty carefully, I would think. The safety of access to the property in times of flood for ordinary and emergency vehicles. The expected heights, velocity, duration, rate of rise, and sediment transport of the flood waters and the effects of wave action, if applicable, expected at the site. And finally, the cost of providing governmental services during and after flood conditions, including maintenance and repair of public utilities and facilities such as sewer, gas, electrical, and water systems, and streets and bridges.
I have one question, and it has partially to do with that, and I didn't think of it till we were reading the findings.
Okay.
And D, so Mr. Logue, you said that the new basins that were being built would be sufficient to overcome a 20-year flood or more.
Oh, yeah.
What about the
100 year.
rest of the facility? How would it affect the rest of the facility?
The rest of the facility right now, where the actual plant is, where the buildings are and all that, that's already elevated to higher than 1 foot above the base flood elevation. If you look at these maps right here, in fact, right there is the plant, and that's elevated already above it. So that's a non-issue, in my opinion. The issue, that question 11 there, the cost of providing governmental services during and after flood conditions. My impression of how I view that, as far as from even a permitting process, it's would this variance, or would this put more people at risk? Meaning, are we approving it for a private enterprise that during a flood event people might be stranded, and our police or our fire or emergency service people would not be able to access them? The plant itself, where our employees work, is already elevated out. It's elevated above the base flood elevation. In the evenings, there's one person working there, and in the day shifts, there's usually a maximum of 3 employees there. The road out of there is also going to be elevated above the 100-year floodplain, so there would actually be an access out of that area in a flood event. So I believe, in my opinion, that's satisfactorily addressed by the design of the plant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else that you have a question about or concern about? In that case, I assume that we're ready to vote, so we'll start with Mr. Lavelle.
I approve.
I vote yes.
Okay. Mr. Raby.
I vote yes.
Yes.
Okay, and I will also vote yes, so the city has that variance from us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our second case tonight is at 115 Central Avenue. This is in an R1 zone. The appellant is Nathan Carey. The appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 2310, Table A, Schedule of Bulk Controls, to allow construction of an attached garage to a building with a rear setback of 11 feet, where 30 feet is the minimum requirement, and a left side setback of 5 feet with a total side yard setback of 15.5 feet, where a setback of 8 feet and a total side yard setback of 20 feet are the minimum requirements. So, Mr. Eschenbach.
Okay. If you've been to the site, you've seen that the lot is in the house, the existing house is unusual. It's shoved way back at the back edge of the property. As you can see, there's only an 11-foot backyard. And the other unusual circumstance about this is that the addition itself will not would be conforming. It doesn't break any of the bulk controls. It's the fact that it's attached to the main building now, and that the main building has the side yard and rear yard setback problems. So, as you can see from the diagram that they provided, the side setbacks for the addition itself would be 15 feet on one side and 10 and a half feet on the other, and it would not extend into the front setback beyond what's allowed. So it's just the fact that it's attached to the main building which brings the bulk controls in.
Okay. All right. Let's see, we need to get Mr. Carey, or a representative, to come here. Are we using this table exclusively tonight?
I think you can use the...
Okay, so if you'll just come to... Okay, so if you come to the podium and give us your name and address.
My name is Nathan Carey. I live at 115 Central Avenue.
So you should just tell us why you think you need this variance and why we should approve it, and what can you tell us that we don't already know?
Well, originally, I wanted to build a shed in my backyard to store just basic lawnmower tools and things like that. And this was earlier last year, and I went down to the code office just to ask them if that was, how close it needed to be, away from the property line to the house. And I couldn't put a shed in my backyard, and nor can I put one in my front yard, because you can't have a freestanding structure in your front yard. So essentially, I have a house, and the downstairs is where I keep all those things, and that's usable living space I could be using. And I basically just don't have anywhere to put basic tools that you need for property care.
Okay. Questions?
Well, I have one quick question.
Sure.
Well, I may have more, but, so when I was at the property, I stepped off the amount of space from the front of the house to the brick sidewalk, which is where I saw those posts with the pink strips on them. They were in the front and the back, so I'm assuming that designated the front and the back of the property?
Yeah, I had that property surveyed this summer.
Well, when I walked from the front of the house to those steps, I came up with about 54 feet. So, and then I couldn't see on the deed exactly the size of the property.
It's
So that I didn't take a measuring tape, but I walked up 2-foot steps, and that's what I came up with. So what I'm saying is, if that's correct, then this seems to be inaccurate. So I tried to check on your deed of transfer, but it doesn't give any definitions of the property, meaning the length. Right, so what I'm saying, 54 from this point to the end of the property.
Okay.
So then if you took 24 off of that, you only have 24, and this is almost indicating that you have 50.
Okay.
And that was just very confusing. So did anybody else do?
I did not walk it off, no.
Okay,
I didn't walk it off.
okay.
Saw it.
Yeah, it was so large that
I know it looks very large the way it's laid out there, but I just walked it off because I had the time to do it. And so do you know the actual dimensions of your property?
110 by 50, as far as I know.
Well, and that's the size of a lot of Athens lots.
Right, and that's an old neighborhood. They're all, from everything me and the surveyor and I looked at, they're all the same.
Right. That's the size of my lot, I
Yeah.
think, so.
It's
Different part of town, but same. Okay, so...
on the drawing that I turned in, I didn't measure the front, the front setback, because I didn't think it would be a question, so I didn't put that in the drawing. I did put the side and the rear because that was what was in question.
Well, you didn't do the math. My concern was lot coverage.
Well,
there's more than
don't
enough
think
lot.
that's...
Yeah, it works out to
If
be almost
it's
exactly
110, except that
25%.
when I walked it, it was only 50, so you wouldn't have 50 feet between here, and then you don't have 25, so still enough. That's all I wanted. I didn't do the
Seems to
math.
me you have to work really hard to exceed the lot coverage, because...
It
Looks
was
like there's,
30%,
if the
right?
math's
I know, but
correct,
people put up
51
huge
feet
buildings in-
from front to to proposed addition.
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
Say again? Right, what his diagram shows, but when I say I walked it off, I got 54 feet from the front of the property line to the front of his structure that exists right now. So that's a big difference between what we're looking at here, which is from the front of his property, from the front of his current structure to the end of the property, looks like it's about 75 feet, but that's not the case. I'm just bringing that up as a point of fact.
Okay, what's the front setback that he needs to have, that any of us?
25 feet from the
25 feet.
right-of-way line.
So he has about 25 feet. What he doesn't have is 30 feet in the back. He
Right.
doesn't come close to it,
Right,
so.
right.
Yeah,
Yes, and I'm not having an issue with that.
Yeah,
I just
okay.
bring that up because
Yeah, okay.
you're looking at one thing and it looks like it's something and then,
right. But
Right.
essentially, he does still have the 25 feet here, I think, right?
he,
Yeah, if
Well,
this
if
is
this
50
is-
feet and you take off 24, he's still got 25.
That's hard to believe this is 11 too, but
well,
I
I'm
don't
gonna
think
put
you
it
tried
right
to
back.
work to
11
scale
feet.
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's about 10.
wow.
Okay.
So, but you can't tell because I wasn't sure where the end of the property was, whether it went to the road. But then I saw the stakes, so then I assumed that the stakes were indicators of somebody had surveyed the property. I saw in the back. I was driving around.
Well, I had some small concern about the actual size of the addition, and I can understand why you might want it to be this big. Once upon a time, we gave a variance to a property out on the east end of town. They wanted a garage with something above it. It turned out that the addition was bigger than the house, and I've never heard the end of it from the neighbors there.
Right.
And you're not quite doing that,
Yeah.
but, and maybe that's not an issue for anyone else.
I'm not sure we could really have much say about that, as long as he's meeting.
But it would be
The-
air and light and those considerations. And I don't see anyone else here, neighbors didn't unless someone's here to speak.
No, I looked at that, the consideration of light and how much, even with the structure, the proposed structure, it's going to be past the neighbor's house.
Sure.
It's
finally going to come
south,
up to the neighbor's
even the
house.
way the light, comes from the south most of the year,
Yeah.
I don't think. By the time it gets at an angle where it even would shadow it, my house is already going to be in the way, and it's 2
not gonna be a
stories.
problem.
And that's, the structure in the front's only going to be 1. So if it did affect it, it'd be minimal.
Okay. Other concerns or questions?
Yeah, ideally, when I looked at that and visualized the garage, it's going to sit it's going to take away your front door.
Right. Well,
Get
it'll
it.
sit to the left, where it already
You'll
is.
still have the front door there?
Yeah, I thought.
drive-
So when I thought that, I thought, would the
So
ideal
house
be
up.
to be able to move it totally to butt up against your neighbor's property on the right or the left so that you could have as much front visual access to your house as possible?
Well, it is over as far as it can on this. The front door is already on that side.
Well, given,
So here's the front door?
given that if we gave you a variance to say,
Yeah.
we'll let you have it
That's big.
1 foot from your neighbor's property line, to scoot it over as far left or as far right as possible to have more
Would I do
front of
that?
your house, would that be your ideal location for the garage?
No, it wouldn't.
Or you want to tie it into the sidewall of the house,
Well, it has to be tied
It
in.
has to be.
Yeah.
an attached garage?
It
Yeah,
has
and
to
it,
be.
I mean,
You can't
it's,
have a
and it's
freestanding
easier
structure in the front
construction to
yard.
do it that way anyway. That way, you continue the line that's already there.
Okay.
Yeah. If I had enough space, it would be nice to not even look at it, but, that's not the case.
I just thought you were going to have to go out your front door, into the garage, and out of the garage to...
No, the front door will still be,
Okay.
exterior.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that is going to
Yeah.
be, but, so is this going to be a 1-story structure
Yes.
and drainage off of that, I'm assuming?
Not close enough to really bother anybody else.
It would seem that way.
You'll just finally come sort of in line with the rest of the houses.
And some of them are tight down there.
Yeah, true. Other questions? Okay. If need be, you can come back after we've talked a bit, or after we've talked to your audience a bit, and have the final say if you need to do that, okay? But you could just sit down for a minute while we talk.
I have also, I'll
Okay,
just bring
sure.
it in since I'm here. For what it's worth, I wrote up a petition that told exactly, what my circumstance was.
Fine.
And I took it around my neighborhood, and I've got almost all of the people that are in my surrounding area. Names are on there. A lot of them are property owners. Some of them are, adjacent property owners that you guys sent letters to. But if you'd like to look at that.
I would be happy
or
to have it.
Yes, that would be really helpful.
And this is just something I've collected in the last couple of days. But I'm sure, I didn't come across anyone that wouldn't sign. And most of them are people I know, and they all live real close.
All right.
So do you want to read that lease statement into the record?
That he has brought a petition? Yes, we
Yeah.
can say that, as soon as we look at it. Excuse me. My goodness, how many has he got? 1843. Okay. 11 more. 44, okay. All right. Mr. Carey, excuse me, is bringing us a petition from his neighbors, and he has 44 signatures from his neighbors who approve of his design. There you go. Have we got a motion for this variance? Excuse me.
Yes, I can read the motion. Board is requested to consider a variance for 111 Central Avenue, zoned R1, case number 1213V, from 115 Central Avenue, zone R1, case 1213V, from Athens City Code 2310, Table A, Schedule of Bulk Controls to allow construction of an attached garage to a building with a rear setback of 11 feet, where 30 feet is the minimum requirement, and a left side setback of 5 feet with a total side yard setback of 15 feet, where a side setback of 8 feet and a total side yard setback of 20 feet are the minimum requirements.
Second, anyone?
I second.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this variance? Anyone wishing to speak in general comment? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's everything.
All right, thank you. So we'll close the floor and deliberate and see what we come up with.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So the first thing we need to consider is practical difficulty and undue hardship because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property. A literal enforcement of the regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that's unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes.
Well, the practical difficulty comes from the location of the existing house, which is creating the undue hardship of being able to locate the garage
Okay.
with the proper setbacks.
All right. And I think by saying that, you have come to the next finding, which is exceptional circumstances.
Yes, the location of the house.
Okay, so it's the location. And 50 by 110 is not a small lot in many parts of Athens, but it's not the size of lots that we expect now, is it?
No, the common lot now would have to be 66 foot wide.
Okay. So that too, although it's not totally exceptional, and certainly not exceptional in that neighborhood.
And just so you're aware,
It's
it's
smaller than
actually
two.
the existing house that you're getting the variance on, not the
Yes,
garage
okay,
itself or the
yes.
addition.
Yes, thank you. That's good to remember. Preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of the regulations would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, while a granting of the requested variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone and the same vicinity.
No, I don't think it would. Others have.
Okay. Other people probably have garages, and in this case, we're really talking about the setback side and back. But I don't think it confers any special privilege to him. Is this a minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property?
Yes, we can't move the house.
Absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the purposes of the zoning code or the public interest.
No.
Well, I have a quick question on that. I was
Okay.
just reading through all the names, and although I know several people that live there, including the person who lives next door, and I don't see their name on here, so I'm curious as to where these people live that signed this petition.
Well, does it?
No
doesn't give the
addresses. No, so that makes it difficult for me
Okay.
to accept this as part of evidence since we don't have addresses.
We don't have addresses. Well, I'm going to, in this case, trust Mr. Carey that they are his neighbors.
Thank you.
Okay.
And no one showed up either.
But nobody showed up, but
No.
I'm just saying
Sure.
that as with no
Yes.
addresses,
No, you're
and
right.
several of the people that I know live there, I didn't see them listed,
It's
so in their
good to have
adjacent,
the addresses,
this would
certainly.
be far afield, I think. Far afield?
That's,
The last finding
Well,
is,
no, I mean, like I said, if you look at the dates, those are all yesterday and today. And, I work 8 to 5, I have a pretty small amount of time to...
I think she's just saying it's
No, that's
useful
not the
to have,
question.
to have the addresses, that's all. Okay. The last finding is not of a general nature. The condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use is not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make reasonably practicable the formulation of a general regulation for this condition. And the answer typically here is no.
yes, it's not.
Yes, it's not. That's right, okay.
I was going to say, no,
So-
it's not.
Okay. Are you ready then to vote?
We are.
All right, we'll start with Mr. Reddy.
Vote yes.
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 Okay, and I will also vote yes, so there's no problem with that variance. All right. Proceed here. The next case is 1215V. Am I skipping something? No, it's 1214V. It's at 55 First Street. It's in Zone R1, and Michael Lockman is the appellant. He is requesting a variance from ACC 2310, Table A, Schedule of Bulk Controls, to allow construction of an addition to a principal structure with a rear setback of 0 feet, where 30 feet is the minimum requirement. Let's hear from Mr. Eschenbacher first, and then Mr.
For those, the diagrams and such that I passed out to you at the beginning of the meeting, especially the one that shows, the last 2 pages where it shows where the house is and where the addition would roughly be, you can see that it's basically pretty much of an empty space there. The back part that they refer to as 0 setback would go up against that platted alley. And of course, that alley, I mean, there is no actual road there or gravel or anything, so the back of the house would be going up against that alley. And then there are lots across from there. But otherwise, it's just an addition to the house. So, if you have any questions.
I think we may want to note that the alley, or the property on the other side of the alley, correct me if I'm wrong, you own them as well. So,
So I guess my question would be, for someone in the code office, does the city use that, is that alley of any use or for safety or any other kinds of utility concerns for the city?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, well, and I thought about that on the way here, actually. But if it is a utility concern, since there's nothing being constructed over top of it, even with this proposal, I don't think it'd be an issue. I don't think there's ever a plan, obviously, to put a road in there. So that would be probably the only time that it would be an issue with the building abutting to that, but I can't speak for the future on that.
Okay, so we don't know if there's any utilities. I'm thinking of sewer drainage. You know those problems that they had over, was it on 3rd Street or whatever, down the hill and the current, and there was all that issue with...
That one's going down, this one's actually going up, isn't it?
Well, it's
That was-
going, it goes
Yeah.
up and down, right? That's in it's a hill, but, you know, I don't know what to say. But, so my only concern was that is, just by the lay of the land, that I can't see the city, you know, maintaining the road back there for any reason whatsoever. But I was just concerned about city services, any kind of city infrastructure that would be, it would impair, is my question.
I'll see if I can get an answer while we're discussing. How's
Okay.
that?
All right, anything else from the city? Okay. Mr. Lockman, will you give us your name and address, please?
Okay, my name's Michael Lockman. I live at 55 First Street in Athens. So, a little background on this project. My wife Becca and I are the owner-occupants of this current structure at 55 First, and my wife moved there about 5 years ago. We got married. I moved in. Fast forward to now, we're looking at enlarging the house. It's a 3-room structure, an upstairs, a downstairs, and a bathroom. It's just under 900 square feet. So it's been great for a young couple. It's a very interesting design. It's a house with a carport at ground level, a first floor on the second floor, so to speak, with decks around it. And on that downside of the hill, it's on stilts. And then the sleeping floor is just above the first floor. So it's a very tall, skinny house with a very small amount of square footage. As I said, this has worked great for us up to now. We're thinking of starting a family. If we start a family, it's not going to work so well with the square footage and the layout of the house. So we went to the drawing board to look and see if we could add space and enlarge the structure somewhat, and immediately upon looking at the property lines, started to bump up against all kinds of problems. So at that point, I went down to the code office and had a long talk with John, and it seemed like there was really no way around this. It's next to impossible to build off any of the other 3 sides of the house. You'd have to tear out the kitchen to build off the south side. You'd have to build up about 6 to 7 feet from on the west side, because that's the side that's coming down the hill that's on stilts. We don't have any space setback-wise on the east side, so the north side was looked at as not perfect, but perhaps the least of the 4 evils. And the issue with the way the structure is placed is that it's right against, or fairly close to, that back property line already. I don't know if there was a variance granted when the structure was built, but it's only probably at the closest corner about 4 feet from the corner there to the north to that alley right-of-way. So there's already a fairly serious setback issue that's going on with that existing structure. Most of what we're proposing to do is to replace that deck that's existing with the addition. The one corner would be right up to the edge of that right-of-way, but not into it. In terms of, let's see, the issue of what has been done with this right-of-way in the past, if you go down to Walker Street, there's a structure there that's actually, as far as I can tell, right on the alley right-of-way line. If you follow it around the T to 59 First Street, there's a similar story there. It's right against that property line. So I don't know if that has any bearing on this particular case, but that's certainly, things have been done very tightly in the past with this particular right-of-way. I didn't know, as far as any other documentation being admissible at this point, there were a couple of pictures that I took. Might give you a feel for the lay of the land. There's an overlay of property lines and contours of the land at this point. And there's also a picture of the backyard with the right-of-way as close as I can tell, walking it out from the pins. It's very hard to measure anything without getting it resurveyed at this point, but I did the best I could. So would the board like to see those?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you know how old this house is?
It's fairly new. It was built in 2000.
Interesting.
And your nearest neighbors are, it looks like, somewhat distant from your current house, at least 70 feet, I think I remember reading in your document that you submitted to us.
Yeah, I don't have an exact number, but it's a ways. 59 First is the closest house.
Gives you a good aerial shot.
So it's up the hill.
What's the rear setback at the moment?
The setback at the moment is as close as I can measure it, and again, there's nothing there, but I'd say it's about 4 feet from that corner of the deck.
Anybody got any questions while we're looking at these pictures? Since we don't seem to have any questions at the moment, you could sit down for a minute. We'll see what people on the floor say, and then you can come back if you like. Okay. So let's get a motion for this variance, if you would.
I move in case 12-14B, 55 First Street, Zone R1, the appellant is requesting a variance from Athens City Code 23.10, Table A, Schedule of Bulk Controls, to allow construction of addition to a principal structure with a rear setback of 0 feet, where 30 feet is the minimum requirement.
I second.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this variance? Will you tell us your name and address?
My name is David Claudiovanni. I live at 59 First Street with my partner, Melissa Haviland. I'm here on her and my behalf tonight, and we'd just like to support Michael and Becca They're fantastic neighbors and wonderful citizens of our community. We feel that it won't affect us at all, as their house is down the hill from us. Also, to just speak about that alleyway, it is a wooded, densely wooded area that is at about this angle. We plant plants on our hill, which is the same hill that that alleyway goes down, and there is no alleyway. Actually, the alleyway that is there is beside our house. It is our driveway, which the city does not maintain, which we maintain as well. So I just wanted to offer that. I think I'm done.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone who wishes to speak in general comment? Yes.
My name is Matthew Cook. I work for Stalwart Construction. I'm the proposed builder for the addition. I'm just available if you have questions about the structure specifically.
Okay. Wonderful. Anybody got questions? So this is a two-phase operation, I understand. Is that right?
Right. Well, the initial project that I have worked up an estimate for at this point is just for the addition to the house at this point. So that's all that I'm here to be hired for at this point.
So you're going to put an addition on the house, and then later there'll be another structure that's connected to the house by a breezeway. Is that
right? And we've discussed that, but we haven't even worked up an estimate for that yet.
All right. And in fact, that has nothing to do with the setback, so okay. Yeah. Anything you want to ask? Now's your chance. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, I guess no one wants to talk very much, so let's close the floor.
In opposition?
Did I say, does anybody wish to speak in opposition? I forgot that. Okay, so let's close the floor from discussion, and we'll go through the findings and see what you think. The first, again, is practical difficulty and undue hardship. Because of circumstances pertaining to the property, a literal enforcement will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that's unnecessary to public purposes. What do you think?
I think so. It's, they do own the property on the other side of the right-of-way, and as of right now, the city is not using the right-of-way. It's covered with trees, so the city couldn't even access it, and it's, I guess...
I haven't gotten a response.
We may or may not know that there's services under there, but at least they're not building right on that piece of property. So yes, I think it meets that criteria.
Exceptional circumstances. There are extraordinary circumstances applying to the property that don't generally apply to other properties in the same zone.
Well,
What you just stated, the extreme topography of the land.
I think that's certainly true, and I think it's also exceptional that they own the property on the other side of the right-of-way, which is inaccessible anyway, so, okay.
So in order to use the property, they should be able to do this.
Yes, I would think so. Preservation of equal property rights, literal interpretation would deprive them of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone, while granting a request will not confer any special privilege. Well, we don't typically allow people to have zero setbacks, but we have noted some exceptional circumstances. So, minimum variance, it's the minimum required to make possible the reasonable use of the property.
Seems to be yes.
Okay, anything else you want to add to that? Remember, this is our only record in case everybody wants to sue us more.
Well, they're not going, minimum. We're not giving a variance to use the right-of-way. We're just giving them a variance to use their own personal property.
Okay. Absence of detriment. It will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the code or public interest.
No, we had one neighbor speak out in favor, so obviously there's, and no one in opposition.
Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and say that it's not of a general nature. Okay. So, are you ready to vote? We'll start with you, Ms. Kronowski.
I vote yes.
Mr. Lavelle?
I vote yes.
Mr. Rick?
I vote yes.
Yes.
Okay, I also vote yes. So you will have the variance for your property. Okay. Now, let us hear about the last case. This is case 1215B. The property is at 924 East State Street. It's in a B3 zone. The appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 2310, Table A, Schedule of Bulk Controls, to allow construction of a motel with 4 stories in a B3 zone where 3.5 stories are the maximum allowed. Mr. Eschenbacher.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, so if you have any questions.
Okay. I do not. Does anyone else have questions for the city?
I think it may be noted as well that the maximum height in that zone is 45 feet, and the plans didn't really indicate the true height, so there may be a height variance request here too by a small
I thought
amount.
that's
Maybe you
what,
can
you
answer that.
Okay. So we're talking feet in addition to stories?
Possibly
Okay.
so. I'm going to have to let
And we
Mr.
have
Bordeaux answer that question.
A limit of 45 feet?
Correct.
Correct, okay. Okay, in that case, will the appellant come and tell us name and address?
My name is Jack Bortle, 124 Longview Heights here in Athens. And I'm developing a new Fairfield Inn and Suites by Marriott hotel. I've developed 3 hotels in Athens, and there's a need for another one, we determined. There's a need of finding a location, which is very difficult in the Athens city, a location that would be acceptable to me as an owner and acceptable to our customers to find us and feel comfortable with staying in the location. When we decided that I currently own the Hampton Inn, I've built the Baymont, and I built the Days Inn as well previously. And we built about 30-some hotels over the last 20 years in Ohio, West Virginia, and Indiana. When we decided to partake this development, I went over and talked to John, and I had found a site. The site that's in question, I think, is close to 3 acres. So there's plenty of room on that site for me to build a 3-story prototype. The difficulty is that I need about 1.8 or 1.9 acres to build a hotel without disturbing the hillside. And my goal is to build a hotel without doing as little damage to the hillside, because this property is about 1.7 acres with the balance of it being hillside. And we built properties before at the downside of a hillside, and I'd like to avoid that. And aesthetically, of course, we live here. We'd prefer to keep the hillside if possible. So I've never built this new prototype. I built 2 other Fairfields. But they have a new prototype, and I think I included that in my packet. The 4-story, I think, based on their prototypical drawings, the estimated height is 44 3/10 inches, or 44.3 inches. When you add the little, we call it gingerbread or bric-a-brac on the top where the Fairfield Inn and Suites sign is, that brings the total height to about 53 feet. Now, I talked to the Marriott people, and they assure me that if there was no other way to do this, that they would allow me to take that top off the building. That would leave me without any signage, so that would be a difficulty. So, but what I'm trying to do is to not damage the site and to build a 4-story site, hotel there. There would be about 92 rooms on the site, 90 rooms if we decide to put a meeting room in the site, in the facility. We will employ about 20, 25 people. It'll generate fair amount of tax revenue for the city and for the county. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Well, my understanding from your application was that this property is behind or approximately behind McDonald's.
Oh, I'm sorry. The property is located, the McDonald's on East State Street, and then there's what used to be Crossroads, and now it's Go-Mart. It's a little convenience store. And there's I think I provided a drawing of the site plan, or site plan. And the entrance would be off of East State Street between McDonald's and Go-Mart. And we would be visible behind both of those. Now, I've talked to McDonald's and Co-Ed, two of my neighbors, as well as the concern that owns the old Woolhands Lumber Company, which is next door to us, none of which have objections, and I've got some emails from them stating such. I've not been able to be in contact with Go-Mart, tried a couple of times, but not been able to reach them. But I've left messages numerous occasions telling them that they had an objection, that I'd like for them to call me so we could talk about it. But I've not heard from them.
You're going to have to clarify for me, where is this property?
It is behind McDonald's.
If you drove into the McDonald's
I
parking
did.
lot,
I did.
and
I
then
did.
back there, that green field,
It is to the
Behind
east of,
McDonald's
is to
on
the
East
east of
State
Co-Ed.
yes.
I only saw a big hill.
No?
Well, there's a very large
football
green
lot.
field.
Where is it?
If you went to
I
Aldi's
looked over
parking
that
lot.
way, and I looked over that way, and
And
there's
went-
Go-Mart, and there's a little tiny space behind Go-Mart, and nothing
Yeah.
behind McDonald's.
Pull into the Aldi's, like if you were going to go to Aldi's,
That's down by Wendy's.
and go clear over to the left, and you'll come to the border behind Crossroads. And then you can look over the vast,
Okay.
It's parallel to the Aldi's building, and parallel to Co-Ed.
Almost.
So as you look, it's
So it's-
Co-Ed, this site,
the other
and then the Aldi's building.
Okay, all right.
So
That
is
would have
that
helped me to
green,
know. Okay.
Is that an easement into that property between the gas station and?
No, it's part of the site,
Yeah, it's actually T-shaped.
yeah.
The
It's a
property is
yeah.
actually T-shaped.
Yep.
right?
Okay. And you're saying that with the fourth-story building, you wouldn't have to cut into the hillside as much?
There'd be some, but not in nearly as much as if we were to have to build a three-story building.
So you're
Three-story
still going
building.
to hit into the toe of the hill?
Yeah, we into the hillside, and we have retaining walls. Aside from the cost, I'm not interested in building a retaining wall, but just aesthetically, I'd like to leave well enough alone. It seems to be draining just fine with the hill being where it is. I don't want to open myself up to something that, who knows when you start taking a piece off the side of the hill. We try to do it in a reasonable way, but you don't know what you're going to get into.
I have two concerns. The first one that I've jotted down is, with the sign that you plan to have, would it be within the code in size and placement? Or would you
Oh,
be
yes.
thinking of coming for a variance for the size and placement
No.
that you'll need for the sign?
When we built our Hampton, we stayed within the code, that we do the same thing there. And we're not going to ask for another variance on signage. Whatever the code allows, we'll do.
If it's located as indicated on this drawing, just first glance, size would be okay. It may have to slide a little bit more to the center to get the 10% in from the edge of the wall, but that's minimal.
I mean, one that's a sign that may be out towards State Street.
Out on State Street, he would be allowed to install a 100-square-foot sign.
Which is what we did at the Hampton, and we would do the same thing out there.
Up, down, arrow, low.
To ask John, and then your feedback would be, I noticed a lot of properties on State Street now have a sign on a side street that says right turn only. Is that instigated by the city due to the high congestion of traffic, or you have several signs that say right turn only exiting that street?
No, they haven't been instigated, but Andy Stone, the Director of Engineering and Public Works, would do comment on this. This would be a Title 41 project, and if it was determined that left-hand turns out of there would be difficult or not warranted, he would probably recommend that, and we would, that's something we would have to look at down the road. as to whether or not that would be permissible based on the traffic count and on the studies of what the traffic is to that area. So Andy would be better to answer that question.
Okay. And how would that affect you if you could only turn
Right.
right coming out of your hotel driveway?
Well, it would not affect me personally, but it would affect the hotel. We fought that or talked about that when we built the Hampton, whether we could turn right and left. Not only was the Hampton located as a hotel, turning right and left, but there are 2 restaurants there as well. There would be a maximum of 100 cars per day at the hotel. That's if we'd sold every room and every employee was in place for the day. At our current projections, we probably have 75 cars a day, of which most of those cars are arriving after business hours. I've also talked with the Altis, the owners of the Alti building. Although we don't have a cross easement, they're open to that, so that we can get there's another direction out of the site. There would be another direction out of the site. I'd chosen not to proceed with that simply because I want to make sure that I can build a building on the building before I proceed and buy the site.
I just find it personally very hard to exit to the left.
Sure.
Going out of any of those businesses on State Street.
You've got a point, but we've not experienced that problem. I mean, they do it for McDonald's currently and the Crossroads currently.
Well, Wendy's does have a sign that says no left turn.
McDonald's has a sign also.
Does it?
Yeah,
Well,
I think it looks like they put it up themselves.
Doesn't mean that
They
people
put
obey
them
it,
up
but they do have such a sign.
I think both of them put them up themselves because
Okay.
what was happening is people were sitting there waiting to turn left and their drive-throughs were backing up.
Yeah.
Another thing, the reality is that most people would be turning right anyways. I mean, the traffic coming into Athens for
Maybe not.
overnight stays is coming from Columbus. It's not coming from the other direction. So most of our people are going to be back going towards Bob Evans and getting on 33 and going back to Columbus.
Well, if they're all going down to Bob Evans to eat breakfast, and I'm trying to pull out of Wendy's, and I have to wait for another 20, 30 cars.
Well, they wouldn't all be leaving at the same time.
Well, may I add that even if there's a 3-story hotel there, that would be permissible, and that would be something we'd have to deal with, again, through the Title 41 process, so.
Since you built the Beaumont, how many rooms does the Beaumont have?
The Baymont?
Or the Baymont?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The Baymont has 100 rooms. I built 60 and then added 40 to it, and then we sold the property. We owned the property, I think, about 15 years.
And what about the Hampton?
Hampton has 86 rooms.
And how tall is it?
3 stories.
It's 3-story.
3 stories.
Yeah, I cruised down.
How many
just-
rooms?
Pardon?
How many rooms?
86.
So it's a little bit smaller.
Yeah, we try to build as many rooms as we can. When I first started in the business, our first property that we built was the Days Inn here in Athens. And the standard was about 60 rooms. You could actually spread your cost evenly, and you could make it on 60 rooms. Today, you need at least 85 to 90 rooms in order to spread a cost effectively so that you can make it. In addition to that, Athens is a very vibrant hotel market. Since we built the original Days Inn, we've built another 100 rooms at the Baymont, another 86 at the Hampton, and another 80 at the Holiday Express were built, and another 40-some rooms at the Ohio University Inn. And if you wanted to get a room for Parents' Weekend or most weekends, you'd have to call much in advance to get a room.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are there any other 4-story hotels on East State Street or in the area?
No.
No.
No, this would be the first.
This would be the first. And I
Does
just built-
Marriott provide other design schemes that would not require you to?
We have 3-story, but the 3-story building becomes longer and deeper in order to get the same square footage.
But you're still cutting into the hill anyway.
Or more so. With a 3-story, if it weren't for that, it'd be easier for us to build a 3-story. But I prefer to try and keep excavation to a minimum. That's the reason for the request for the variance. would you like me to give you these other emails from the...
Please.
Well, before you do that, tell
Okay.
me how many rooms you could have in a three-story without digging into the hill very much.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
The number of rooms that you could have with a three-story.
Oh, I could build, on that site, we could build 120 rooms. If
By
we took-
digging into-
We'd have to go way into the hillside.
Okay, I'm
to do
saying
it.
if you're only going as much into the hillside as you would with a four-story, how many rooms could you get in three stories?
Probably in the 60s. We haven't looked at it, but yeah, I know from experience that we couldn't get enough rooms on it to make the site work.
Okay, other questions? No. What else would you like to tell us?
I have some copies of the emails from the adjacent property owners. And then also an email that was sent to me by the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Chamber of Commerce in support of it.
Thank you. John, if you could confirm for the record that we do now have fire capability to reach 4 stories?
That is correct. I did talk to Chief Troxel, and years past, he would require maybe an access lane all the way around the structure, and that is no longer required of him with our new truck, number one, and then the modernization and requirement now to have fire suppression systems in these type of structures, which many years ago were not required.
Thank you.
Is there height specifics in this brochure that you gave us?
Yeah, on
I was
page 2.
Page 2.
The low elevation right here.
You really have to look,
Inside the brochure.
but there's a schematic of the building, and if you add all those numbers up together,
Okay, so then we can try to determine where the height of the
yeah, the...
building is, less the gingerbread on the top.
The
right?
top of the building, I think, is 44.3. That's the top of the 4-story. There's four rows of windows. The top of that building, on the right and left, after talking with Marriott, is 44.3. And we're using their prototypical drawings. We've not done final drawings ourselves yet, but based on their drawings, it's 44.3. When you add that extra signage area up, that little bric-a-brac or gingerbread that sort of gives the building some identity and a place to put their signage, then it brings it up to, I think, 53 feet. I don't remember, John, what the height requirement is. What I'm allowed is at
45.
45 feet,
Those
but only
numbers
3.5
add up.
story.
10.
Yeah, they don't add up.
Well, it'd be about 41 feet, because that'd be about a foot in between the floors, and if they are going greater with the lowered ceiling, drop ceiling, then it would be 44 feet.
That's
So,
why they don't.
depending on the distance between floors.
And I got my dimensions and numbers from Marriott. And then I was actually told, this is the third Marriott product that I've built. I've built for Holiday Express, and I've built for Hilton, the Hampton, and Wyndham with Baymont, Best Western. So we built all of the different hotel chains. Marriott being probably the most difficult that we built for. And talking about the fire suppression system, their requirements are the most stringent of all of the ones that we deal with. They require that we have a system which allows us to know if fire is in any one particular room rather than a series of rooms. Most of the other hotel chains allow us to use sections, so there might be 8 to 10, 12 rooms in a section with one annunciator. Marriott requires an annunciator panel, so it goes back to each and every room. So substantially more expensive to do it, and we prefer not to do it, but Marriott says we need to, so we're required to do so. Anyways, I lost my train of thought, but when I was talking with Marriott about the height of the building, they offered to me, which I was kind of surprised, that we could alter the look of the building to get that signage off the front of the building. And so we would maintain the 44.3 foot height if we were required to by local requirement. I prefer not to do that because most people that arrive at a hotel are lost when they get there. It's not like going to the Wendy's, you see the Wendy's sign and you're hungry and you know where you're going. Most people arrive at our hotel, they've never been to Athens, or they haven't been to Athens very often, and they're looking. And the more signage that we have, the more ability we have for them to find us, the safer it is. So we would like that signage on the top of the building, if possible.
Where do they suggest the signage would be if it was?
It wouldn't be.
There would be no signage on the building?
Not on the building. Just the little signage that you see on that stone, which is not visible to anyone. The only signage that we would have would be a pylon sign at where the drive comes back from East State Street. And we would, I think, be limited to 100 square feet. And that sign, if you can visualize it, would look very similar, if not identical, to the one that we have for the Hampton, because that meets the sign ordinance.
Do most of the buildings, most of the businesses on East State have signs that are actually 100 square feet?
All the shopping plazas definitely do.
Okay. Nothing has anything bigger than that?
I can't say that. If there's been some that receive
McDonald's.
variances, I think there have been some that receive
I think
variances.
McDonald's, you guys give
is
McDonald's a variance to have a sign slightly bigger, I think.
They do. It was supposed to come into compliance
It was supposed
a
to
long
come into
time ago with the new
compliance.
sign code, but never did.
Right. I don't think we gave him a variance because he already had the tallest sign in town. It was way taller than anybody
Size,
else's, and the size was big too.
Did we give a variance to the mall out on East State Street? I know they added, I'm not sure whether that was,
I don't know, we seem to have talked about it a lot, and I objected and said it was a terrible sign to begin with.
No, we
well,
did.
right, I remember the conversation, but it passed and they got a variance to
Yes, I
increase the
guess they did.
size
Yeah.
so they could add the
More
rest of their
people.
tenants.
Okay, yes.
You know, part of the problem I have is not only is this like up above a height, if you drive down East State Street, what I did, which is what I did, and looked across on both sides, you know, there's an eye level, and then beyond that eye level, you see the ridges on both sides. Not only would this be up above all the eye level, because it does go up on a rise, it's going up on a rise, then it's going up even a little higher from the buildings in front, is then you're going to have a big sign up there too. And I think just a lot of what's part of why this code, they scripted that in here was to keep things at
Some kind of uniformity.
friendly level
Sure.
so that we would not have a pollution scenario. So, but I do have a question for John. Is it 45 feet or 3.5, or do they have to be, is it 45 feet or 3.5, or is it 3.5 stories?
3.5 stories, maximum 45 feet.
Okay, so both
So
those
it's
things.
kind of,
So that's the question, is it 3.5 stories first, maximum 45 feet? That would be,
It's not either or.
it's not either or,
and.
yeah, it's
Right.
well,
combined.
Dennis, it is 3.5 feet though, because
For 3.5 stories.
3.5 stories, so this is 4 stories.
Right, I mean, I guess if what you're trying to say is, are you wanting to
Well, it's a slash.
request a
so-
variance for 4 and then request a variance for the height as 2 separate entities, 2 separate requests, or? looking
Well,
at it
no,
from-
if we would give him a variance for the 4, but make a stipulation that the top gingerbread come off, which would make the height, less than 45.
It would be 44.3, which would be okay.
Right, so that's my question. So if, I think it would be very difficult to give someone a variance for 4 feet, 4 stories under circumstances. We've had several people come through and we've turned them all down because it's important to the visual integrity of the city, right?
How many did you have?
So that's why I'm asking to, we've never had to define this before in a situation, because everybody always, if they were going above 3.5 stories, they were going above 45 feet, so.
Sure, he could say, I'm building a 3-story, 45-foot structure.
Right.
It'd be the same question that you're...
Right, well, no, that's fine, then he wouldn't even have to come. He wouldn't be here.
True.
He wouldn't be here at all.
Well, he's here because of the 4 feet.
Right.
4 stories.
4 stories.
Right.
Not the footage.
Yeah, 4 stories.
Well, the footage, if you do it this way, because it's 53.
If you take the top off.
Well, I'm talking, without...
Yeah, right, without that, no. So that's, my question is, then at 43 point whatever, right? It wouldn't be a visual situation above the aesthetics of the visual situation that already exists on State Street?
It's not going to be taller than 45 if you remove the gingerbread, no matter if it's 4 stories, 3 stories, 2 stories. It's not going to be above
that
the
maximum
code of 45 feet.
Right. And now, but whether he's doing three stories or 4 stories, he's still cutting into the hill.
Yes.
So he's still cutting into the hill. And so, you know, if you're cutting into the hill, you already cut the toe of the hill off, it's going to slip, you know. So I don't know that really makes any difference. Whether, you know, looking at that circumstance.
So your concern is that this hotel will dominate, so to speak, East State Street, and you wouldn't like that? As in the aesthetic, it would be above and beyond?
Correct. Part of the sign ordinance and the height limitation was to not visually pollute the city. I don't know, you've probably been to plenty of cities where you see all these crazy things. I go through Westchester all the time, it's like so ugly. And at least when you drive through Athens, you know, there's a visual line, you can just look up and then you have the hills on both sides. If something else starts sticking up, the other thing that happens, and then other people come to the board and say, well, you know, it's hard to find property in Athens and I'd like to do this, right? And so then all of a sudden, some of the restrictions the city put in place to maintain that, then start getting eroded away. I don't know, it's difficult.
There is in fact a rather long history of fighting 2 big signs in Athens, which you may know about.
I do.
Yeah, okay.
Is there a way to compromise here? What are you saying? What are you thinking here?
Well, I'm thinking if he's going to cut into the hill, he's going to cut into the hill anyway, so that's not, and we can't really consider, the board does not consider the economics of a project. We're not allowed to use that as, to weigh the situation. But if he's going to cut into the hill, he's going to cut into the hill. So to me, that just erases that as a variable.
But the height can be addressed.
But the height can be addressed by not putting the very top part on, and then they're within the 45 feet limit as reflected in the code, and we could give them a variance for
45 feet.
4 stories. Under 45 feet, we'd have to specify that when we say the ordinance. The building to be no higher than 45. Yeah. No higher than 45 feet. We'll approve the 4 stories if it's no higher than 45 feet. And, I don't know, Betty?
That makes sense to me.
That makes sense to me too.
So they can figure out something else to do about the sign.
Yep.
And then if they don't want to do that, they can just go back and do the 3-story, and they're going to cut in the hill anyway, so.
Well, or find another property. I know
Right,
that's a
and
problem
that's-
too, but I'm not so hot for this particular thing as it is, so, okay. Any other questions for Mr. Bortle? Yes,
Could I say something?
of course.
Okay. As far as the sightline is concerned, if you look at the co-ed building, we would be underneath the sightline of the co-ed building as it sits our neighbor. I believe when you put that, I have just visualized it, the co-ed building sits about 30 feet above us. So when you look at the second level behind on East State Street, you see the co-ed building and you see our hotel is pretty much the same height. The other issue is that I can't express enough the safety issue of the people that come to the hotel. Signage is important. I mean, if we can't get the signage on the side of the building, we can't. But I just would reinforce that the signage is very, very important to people who don't know where the property is. And finally, going into the hillside, we would marginally go into the hillside with this 92-room design. We would substantially go into the hillside on 3-story, which in the 40 years I've lived here, you know, we've tried to be good citizens of the city, and we know that the city would prefer the hillsides not be disturbed. That's the reason that I'm here. If I felt that there was no reason to be concerned about that, I wouldn't be here. We would just go ahead and put our 3-story building in there and let it be. But I felt strongly enough that I'd like the aesthetics of it to be maintained as much as possible. So I believe that we're meeting the spirit of what we're trying to do is this will not be overwhelming on East State Street. It'll be about the same height as the co-ed building when you look at right one next to the other. And they need to be up high enough so that the people can see the building behind the building as a second type of lot behind East State Street. Other than that, I don't have anything else to offer.
Well, this is a fairly wide open space. I mean, I walk back in the lot, and I walk through the easement, and, you know, on East State Street, both the McDonald's and the gas station
Comart.
Are aside and with parking area, and so, I mean, that's not exactly a causeway, but aside from the easement, or the part of the property where you would, the driveway, main driveway going into it, it's pretty open. You could drive by there, and I don't think you would miss it, and if you had signage out front, I'm not sure what that would be like. I don't design signs, but, you know, it would be more sufficient. And, you know, the hillside thing, I mean, the hillside thing, I'm sure you're trying to be a good citizen. I mean, we need to have a city that provides not only city services, but other services, but, you know, that hillside thing is like, that would be a detriment to you if it collapsed like it did behind the mall. You know, that mall thing was just sad. Just sad.
No, I'm just trying to leave it as it is, if possible. And if we find that we can't leave it as it is, then I've tried to do what I can do.
That'd be good.
Any other questions? Any other comments?
No.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of this variance? Okay. Well, you weren't sworn in, so if you want to speak, you can be sworn in.
I stood and was sworn in.
I'm sorry?
I stood and was sworn
Did you?
in. Yes.
Okay. Then if you would like to speak, come on.
I'm Sandy Bortle, 124 Longview Heights, and Jack and I have been in the hotel business for probably, 25, almost 30 years now. And it's very difficult to build a new business, and you need to take into consideration as many opportunities as you can to make the business work. And there have been times where we walked away from projects because suddenly the land cost, the development cost, or whatever, simply you weren't going to be able to get your return on investment. There's a return on investment, and then there's also just making the business go. So these are the things. I know it is not your responsibility to worry about the development dollars. However, in Athens and in most cities, development is certainly very important, and we just hope that you will consider all the aspects that it takes to bring a new business. This particular building will probably be, what, Jack, about $8 million? So it's not a small endeavor, and the city would reap some benefits from it as well. So that's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Okay, let's close the floor. And comments you all want to make? Or you want to just go?
Well, before we go to the findings,
Okay.
we should consider if we want to make a condition of.
I think probably it's good. We can either revise the motion that we have or attach a condition.
So we
or-
need to discuss what condition we're talking about,
Yes.
so we're all in
Okay.
agreement that they meet within the code of, stay within the code of 45 feet.
Right, so maybe we should take a vote on that. Do you want to amend this motion?
I'd be in favor of that.
Okay, all right. Who made it? Who did this motion?
We may not have done one yet.
Did we not have a motion yet?
No, we have not done that
Well,
yet.
for heaven's sake, let's
So
have
we
one
can do it
with
as
a
we
condition
state.
or with whatever you want to put on it.
Okay, so we're going to include, we're going to say, to allow, is requesting a variance.
I've lost my...
Okay, so how would we?
Well, you would just add,
Well-
and a height no
4
higher
stories.
than,
Well, so you just put it
45
in
feet.
here. Right, 44.
So that,
4 stories.
I could say
with,
that, so that,
Not to exceed a height of 45 feet.
okay, so that the building does not exceed height of 45. Okay.
Okay.
That's, and that's the only
Yeah,
other
and so you're
consideration?
just talking about a few words, allow construction of a
Yeah.
motel with 4 stories not to exceed 45 feet.
Great.
Yep,
That's
okay,
all we have
that's
to
fine.
say. Okay. And that was our only other consideration, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Okay, I move
Maybe
the
we-
board,
Maybe we should ask Mr. Boyle if he even wants to have us consider a variance
do you
with
want
that
us?
limitation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
We're about to put a limit of 45 feet on this variance, and so I thought maybe we should ask you if you even wanted to consider the variance with that limitation.
Let me just reply here.
I'm asking you.
Okay. I'm using the prototypical drawings of Marriott.
Yes.
If what they told me is exactly what it is, I have no problem with it.
Okay. All right.
But
I know you would
we're not
prefer
gonna
something
architectural
else.
drawings ourselves. If it turns out to be 45 feet and 2 inches,
Well, maybe
mean, I
we
just-
won't be able to measure that exactly.
that's right.
Okay.
I mean, I just don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that with the numbers they gave me are correct.
Okay, and I'm assuming that Marriott is versatile enough to help you work out something that will satisfy your needs.
But we have to,
Okay, all right, so let's go with that variance.
I move that the board consider case number 1215V, 924 East State Street, Zone B3, a variance from ACC 2310, Table A, Schedule Bulk Controls to allow construction of a motel with 4 stories so that the building does not exceed a height of 45 feet.
Any second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Anything else you want to say before we go through the findings? Okay. Practical difficulty and undue hardship. Because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific property, a literal enforcement will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship.
I'd have to say no. I mean, he's choosing this piece of property as opposed to another, and he's choosing that type of hotel as opposed to another, so.
Okay, so you're saying this is
So
a
it's
self-inflicted
self-induced,
difficulty?
yes,
Yes.
self-induced.
Okay, does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
You might have a different opinion.
Yes.
Okay. Exceptional circumstances. There are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question that do not apply generally to other properties or classes of uses in the same zone.
I would say no.
I would say no also.
Well, I think you could say that the topography, given that there is a hill there, is somewhat exceptional, because not everybody is trying to move that far back on a property in that area. So I think you could say that does apply, because he's asking for 4 stories instead of 3 because of the topography. And that's why we're limiting it to the 45 feet. You may not agree with me, but that's my thinking. Okay. Preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, while granting of the requested variance will not confer any special privilege denied to other properties.
Well, the 4 stories is special privilege.
Okay. Comments? Okay. Absence of detriment. Authorizing of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent properties, will not materially impair the purposes of the code.
Well, not within the 45
No, not
foot
the
limit.
45.
Okay, so the 45 feet is okay. Is that what you're saying?
That would be correct.
Okay.
The code says
Did
so.
I skip the minimum variance?
Yes.
Okay. Variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property.
Well, if it stays within 45, it's within the code.
So it is a minimum variance, is that what you're
Well,
saying?
no, I'm just saying it's within the code.
Okay. Not of a general nature. The condition of situation of the property for which the variance is sought is not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make practical the formulation of a general regulation for such condition.
Yes,
No.
it isn't.
Okay.
No, it is not.
Okay. All right. Let us start with Mr. Housley.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Ravi.
I vote yes.
Okay.
I vote no.
I vote no.
Well, I hate being put on the spot, but I'm afraid I'm going to vote no also. So, I'm afraid you don't have the variance. Do we have any other business to consider beside the minutes? Who has read the minutes?
I've
What about
read the
the-
minutes. Propose we accept them as written.
Okay, so moved. Any other business? I think we have an issue to take up that I need to know about these things that you sent us about cases filed, and do we need to talk about these at all?
It's just for your awareness.
Okay, all right. All right. We adjourn? Anything else?
I can say that, just so you know, Andy said no idea on utilities, and he does not ever think there will be anything developed there, so.
For the
Going back to
property
that.
at
Just so ease of mind for you.
Oh, we probably woke up,
No, he and Jessica both were at another meeting tonight as well. That's why they were here for the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, I guess we're adjourned.